Welcome to the Rimworld mod rundown. We'll be taking a quick look at what you can expect to see from modular weapons. For starters, you'll need to own the additional workshop content, Harmony. An alternate route to take when adding mods to supplement your Rimworld arsenal. Modular weapons adds customizable guns to the game that can be adjusted with a mechanic akin to Call of Duty gunsmithing, with a little less choice and a much more dramatic approach to the stat impact that each alteration will add. A quick mention right at the top of this video. If you play with a really stripped back mod pack and expected, or wanted, these guns to replace their vanilla counterparts entirely, you'll probably want to grab Cherry Picker and use it to remove the base game weapons that Modular Weapons has its own versions of. That way you won't have duplicates in your workbenches or loot tables.
This is getting out of hand. Now there are two of them.
Going through the options first, as you'll have a few different ways to tweak the balance of this mod, and it's all pretty straightforward. Firstly, you can change the gunsmithing UI if you'd like. You have a choice between Legacy, Stable, and Latest. Material requirements increases the cost of altering weapons as you up the difficulty. Easy will make the majority of modifications totally free to add, as if the bench is stocked with boxes and boxes of these parts underneath it, and it's as simple as grabbing what you want and taking the time to attach it. Normal will refund the material cost of what you currently have installed, whilst requiring you to pay the difference if the added part is more expensive. Hard will need you to pay the full material cost of whatever you're adding to the weapon, regardless of how expensive the part already installed may be. So pretty straightforward, and nice that this function of the mod is something you can toggle separately from other features. The checkbox marked Require Research to unlock parts will replace certain modifications with a line of question marks until you complete the associated research, such as needing mortars research to equip underbarrel grenade launchers to your assault rifles. This makes perfect sense to leave turned on to me, but if you want everything available all of the time for these guns, you can simply turn it off and attach whatever you'd like to your firearms. I'll be talking about weapons during this rundown as if you'd unlock the research required to build them yourself, which may mean if you scavenge some assault rifles, some of the attachments will be locked behind precision rifling, which would have been the prerequisite in building it. Gunsmith immediately after crafting will save you the step of equipping the weapon and taking it to a dedicated table after it's been created, which in turn saves a little bit of time. Just be aware that with this turned on, you'll be randomly flashbanged by the gunsmithing UI whenever a weapon is finished in the colony. You also have the options for the chances of NPCs turning up using these weapons and having them with preset customizations applied. If you don't want to go the route of Cherry Picker, you can simply massively up the odds that raiders will use these weapons instead. Finally, you've got a couple of graphical options for the flashlight attachment and multi-threaded rendering for textures, if you want to get into the real nitty-gritty. Okay, nerd shit's out the way, let's cover something a little bit more blasty. There are many official add-ons you can download for modular weapons. For this video, we're just going to cover the 9 included with the core mod as a point of comparison to vanilla weapons, otherwise we'd be here all day. The add-on weapon packs work in a very similar fashion, with the only real exceptions being the Spacer Conversion Kit, which includes parts for existing weapons rather than adding in entirely new guns, and the Portable Cannon add-on. That uses oversized weapons and requires the guns to be grounded before they can fire, because as the name suggests, they're massive. All of the guns included with this mod are unlocked with normal research, alongside their counterparts, as it would make sense. You'll also have the gunsmithing stations, in a fueled and electric variety. The fueled version is unlocked with smithing, and the electric with electricity and gunsmithing combined. To go through the weapons, we'll ascend the tech tree as it were, and start with what you'll most likely unlock first, the revolver, the bolt action, and the shotgun from gunsmithing. You'll notice the footage used during this rundown goes between showing the potential modifications that can be applied to the weapon and trying out some of the more unique or dramatic modifications, like underbarrel launchers or different ammo types. I'm pretty sure it's overkill to do a detailed look at every single part and its potential impact. The modular revolver comes in almost identical to a normal revolver, with a slightly faster firing rate. If you're using the research requirement, it'll have 2 parts locked, magnum ammo behind gas operation and a laser sight behind microelectronics. We'll use this weapon to go over the core mechanics of gunsmithing as well as covering its potential parts. I'm using the latest UI version as I feel it has the clearest display for stat impact. The revolver comes with choices for ammo, barrel, grip, sight and underbarrel modifications, as well as the ability to cosmetically alter the gun via texture overlays or by using a colour wheel, entirely optional, but if you want your colony blinged out with golden weapons or something a little bit more flamboyant, the choice is there. Even by changing a single part of this weapon, like the ammo to either Magnum or Snake Shot, you can already see the kind of stat impact that it's having on the gun, drastically shifting its damage profile, range, accuracy, and aiming and cooldown times. What you'll notice about the stat display to the top left is that it keeps a running tally of all of these changes you've applied to the weapon, with individual changes being displayed when selecting between parts on the bottom right of the screen. As such, you can go in with a general idea of the direction you'd like to take the weapon and pick through the individual parts to see what best supports that. For a Magnum revolver, which is upping the damage at the cost of a hefty aiming time and cooldown, you'd likely want to be able to engage at a greater range too, so that more shots can cycle before enemies get too close. So the long barrel, wire stock, sniper scope and laser sight support this best. But now if you compare the weapon to a standard revolver, it has 9 times the aiming time and a longer cooldown. You need to start asking if what you've tried to repurpose the weapon into is actually even viable. This is the tricky part with modular weapons, especially when used alongside a lot of other mods that add in more firearms. The majority of the time, the negative offset is going to be outweighing the positive. You're paying more and getting less in return. So this heavily modded revolver that we've made, with its boosted damage, range, high-end accuracy, is now performing similarly to a standard bolt-action rifle, but worse. It has more stopping power, granted, but it's packing lower damage, penetration, range, accuracy, and worse firing times, both in aiming and cooldown. As such, going balls to the wall on a lot of the modular weapons is actually the opposite to what you want to do, if you want these weapons to remain viable. In many cases, just 1 or 2 changes will make them useful, maybe even buff them slightly, but trying to turn them into something they're not will just end up with a lame imitation. Restraint is key. The pump shotgun has parts locked behind precision rifling for the sniper scope and microelectronics for the laser sight. Again, identical to a normal pump shotgun, sans the firing rate, this has options for modifying the ammo, barrel, magazine, stock, underbarrel, sight, and barrel side. You might notice the odd addition of things like an additional burst shot count by adding the extended tube, suggesting this works similarly to the Half-Life shotgun and can fire a round out of its own magazine, somehow. With the right setup, you'll also be able to make something really close to the Duke Nukem shotgun too. As mentioned with the revolver, a few small tweaks on this weapon can actually have it coming out quite nicely buffed, without destroying the other stats in the process. A laser sight combined with a red dot sight will buff its short and close range accuracy significantly, only costing a little bit more weight. As the weapon already has a low range, a vertical foregrip will help nudge its cooldown to a slightly lower value, and if you're confident that you're going to be reliably hitting those shots and are able to wait slightly longer between taking them, you can make use of that burst fire from the extended tube. Again, there's no need to go crazy sawing the barrel off, changing the grip and ammo types, just a little bit can go a long way. So whilst this thing won't beat a chain shotgun, if you don't have access to them yet, this can fill the gap whilst waiting to unlock them. Then the bolt action rifle. This thing can make use of 4 potential research unlocks: precision rifling for a stock, barrel and sight, gas operation for another barrel, mortars for the underbarrel launchers, and microelectronics for a laser sight. The immediate thing to call out is that the standard modular bolt action rifle is different to a vanilla one. It has worse close range accuracy, a 0.2 second longer aiming time, and a 0.2 second faster ranged cooldown, so it's working from a different starting point. The obvious question I hear you asking is, why would I be using a bolt action rifle and customizing it if I already had precision rifling? The answer to that is the modifications that precision rifling unlocks actually turns the bolt action rifle into a sniper rifle. So if you have a few colonists with these equipped, you could simply modify their existing weapons up a tier, rather than needing to build new guns entirely. The same damage, stopping power, penetration, and a few options on how you want to juggle accuracy and firing times based on what grip you use. Equally, you could go a different way with this weapon entirely, swapping it out to something resembling an Olympic sports rifle with a wire stock, shorter barrel, red dot, angled foregrip and a laser sight, dealing more damage than a pistol whilst being able to outrange it, at the cost of slightly less reliable accuracy. It's one of the more flexible weapons that you'll have access to at this very early research level. Next up are the weapons from blowback operation, the auto pistol and the SMG, which is akin to the machine pistol from vanilla. The auto pistol has two unlocks, a barrel behind gas operation and the usual laser sight from microelectronics. This is back to being identical to its vanilla counterpart as well, allowing you to change its stock, barrel, magazine, sight and underbarrel options. The weapon comes in with some really cool choices, like the CQC knife in the stock modifications, upping your melee damage and really leaning into the shortest ranged combat. Just make sure you're actually skilled in both ranged and melee before getting into a fight with this. You also have some options with things like the extended magazine to add a little bit of burst to the weapon, giving you an option of stacking it with a red dot and a laser sight to make a weapon that's still pretty snappy but packs a reliable close to short range punch of damage. You'll note that whilst things like the suppressor state that they make it advantageous to use whilst hunting, it isn't actually adding any bonuses to hunting stealth as a stat. Not only that, the gun makes exactly the same noise when fired. This is more of a gravy seals approach to weapon modification, where the sole reason for putting something on it is because it looks cool. The SMG has two barrels, two magazines and a stock locked behind gas operation, as well as the standard laser sight from microelectronics. Stat wise, it's near identical to the vanilla machine pistol, it just wiggles some of the aiming and cooldown time around. This also fills the role of the heavy SMG once you've unlocked gas operation, similarly to how you can upscale your bolt action rifle to a sniper, by fitting it with a longer barrel, slug conversion and a full stock. You'll now see that the stats are near identical, again just slightly wiggling that aiming and cooldown, to a heavy SMG. This weapon has an attachment that does make me scratch my head though, as the foregrip is intended to give easier recoil control, but it actually lowers short, medium and long range accuracy for only the slightest bonus to ranged cooldown, far less than a foregrip does on other weapons. So at a glance, you might have assumed that this will be providing a buff to close or short range accuracy, probably leaning it more towards a corridor cleaner kind of weapon. It's not the case though, it just makes it worse. This is why you should exercise caution about throwing a modification into every slot of a weapon. Just because there's something there to click, it doesn't mean you should. In many cases, leaving weapons unaltered will keep the firearm in a better place and allow it to focus simply on doing one thing better, rather than doing one thing really well at the cost of everything else. Now we're onto the weapon unlocked with gas operation itself, the LMG. It has 4 underbarrel attachments locked behind mortars and the laser sight from microelectronics too. As some of the other weapons have done, it jiggles around its aiming and cooldown a little bit, as well as being lighter than a standard vanilla LMG. The options given to this weapon can quite dramatically shift its burst, from higher to lower counts depending on what combination of parts you apply to it, leaning more towards a longer range, surprisingly accurate saturation weapon, or a close quarters spray and pray assault rifle knockoff. You're never going to get this thing behaving quite like a minigun, unlike some of the other weapons that are covering multiple specific classes of firearm. But to be honest, a well tweaked, accuracy focused LMG might be one of the strongest options included with this mod, which I didn't expect to be saying when I first messed around with it. It's overall less flexible than some of the other choices, but it probably does that job the best out of anything else included. Don't sleep on the LMG. From here we'll unlock precision rifling, which gives us access to the modular assault rifle and the only real unique modular weapon in this core pack, the bullpup rifle, which has a default profile that's actually closer to the vanilla assault rifle than the modular assault rifle is. The modular assault rifle is different to its vanilla variant in a few areas, with lower damage, a percentage less armor penetration, lower range and a shorter accuracy profile as standard. Like other rifles, it has 4 underbarrel attachments locked behind mortars. Adding on a long barrel and a full stock will bring it closer to a normal assault rifle, actually beating its range by 2 whilst matching all of its other stats. This is a weapon that has a huge degree of flexibility in its approach. based largely around the magazine choice, with DMR dropping it to a single shot, pistol rounds crippling its accuracy but making it very snappy, and a drum magazine offering a huge increase in damage for practically no penalty at all. Just a slight weight increase and a shift in cooldown and aiming that results in a 0.05 increase to it, for 2 extra rounds per burst. Look, I've never said this mod was balanced, and this drum mag is practically an auto include for every assault rifle you'll make. As you probably expect from a platform like the assault rifle, it offers some of the highest flexibility of all the weapons included, allowing you to create anything from a corridor cleaner all the way up to competing with an LMG in terms of range suppression. The bullpup has those same 4 launcher options tucked behind the mortar research, but it offers less customization than your standard assault rifle because you can't alter its stock, given that's where the magazine sits. You have similar choices for the magazine itself though, changing the burst and damage profile of the weapon significantly. Because it lacks that stock customization, you're a little bit more fixed in the approach you can take with the weapon, with the majority of focus leaning towards longer ranges, higher burst and high accuracy. If you lean into that, it'll just manage to outperform the assault rifle, with 1 more damage per shot, 1 additional tile of range, and better accuracy, at the cost of a slightly longer ranged cooldown, but I would argue that the huge boost it sees to accuracy over a medium and long range easily makes up for that, as you're now reliably landing all 5 shots against approaching targets.
Nice shooting.
All that leaves is the charge rifle. This doesn't have any underbarrel options, so by the time you've got the tech unlocked to reach this, you've likely got all of its options available. This is back to being identical to its vanilla version stat-wise. The modifications to the charge rifle give you a lot of options for its direction though, practically providing an entire charge arsenal from just the single base. You can make it rapid fire and closer to an SMG, or add a high powered cartridge which ups the range and lowers its burst. This is the one weapon that really defies the suggestion of don't go crazy into leaning hard towards a single direction, as the limited parts that it does have are clearly designed to change the class of weapon that you're building, so moderation goes out of the window for this, swinging wildly from being a 19 damage 2 burst sniper rifle with 40 range and a 3.6 second turnaround on shots, compared to a 13 damage 4 burst SMG with a measly 18 range but only 0.7 seconds of aiming time, allowing you to absolutely splatter raiders in tight corridors before they even have time to act. So that's what you're getting with modular weapons. Now for a few bits of housekeeping. Crafting skill doesn't actually matter for modifying these guns. A colonist that is incapable of crafting can still take a weapon to the table and perform modifications the same as anybody else. You can easily save and load presets for weapons, so you don't need to dig through the UI every time you've got a setup you want to use. You can also name guns to whatever you'd like, for either style or functionality. And yes, quality as a modifier works the same on these weapons as it does on normal guns, so you might find that because of the percentile bonuses to accuracy, you can actually alter what attachments a weapon has when crafted above a certain quality, as they'll be hitting the cap much quicker and better able to utilise something else instead. All in all, an interesting approach to weaponry in Rimworld. It does have a few issues of style over substance with some of the modifications, in that you know you're making the weapon objectively worse by using certain parts. The balance just isn't quite there, which I know is all too easy to say as an observer. Trying to balance all the potential combinations of parts without introducing instant I win buttons is an impossible ask. It's just a shame that some of the cool appearances are tied behind such awful stat penalties. I kinda wish there were 2 layers to play with here. A functional layer controlling the weapon's internal components that will impact the stats, and an external layer solely for the visuals. I get that certain things are going to be tied together. Can't say a weapon is using a sniper scope and have it displaying iron sights, but the option to pick a visually distinct grip or barrel that's operating under a broad umbrella of stat changes would have been nice. I want to use a long barrel with appearance 3 of 5, for example. That might be entirely too much bloat though, so it's probably best that it was avoided in thinking about it out loud. Would I keep this installed as a core mod and use it all the time? Maybe not. but it definitely makes for a nice change of pace to throw this on every now and again, getting you out of the fatigue of seeing and using the same 3 or 4 guns every single game. Now you'll use a different 3 or 4 guns every single game, but they'll be modified. Thanks for watching, folks. If you have any mods you'd like to see a full breakdown for, or suggestions of mods you'd like to see covered, feel free to leave them in the comments, I might get around to them. I'll be back again soon with another Rimworld mod rundown. Wherever you are in the world, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon or evening. Take care.